Akron City Council Budget and Finance Committee meeting to order. All committee members are present except Councilman Freeman. Can we get a motion to approve the minutes from our previously held meeting? Okay, in a second, all in favor signify by saying aye. Okay, very good. We actually have two pieces on the old agenda. I do believe that Councilman Freeman was taking time just to make sure that council members had an opportunity to get any questions answered. So item number 1, ordinance amending ordinance number 42, 2017, passed February 13th, 2017, which established the annual appropriation for the current expenditures and other expenditures and the capital outlays of the city of Akron for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2017, and declared an emergency.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, that is our appropriation amendment, the first one for this year. If there are any questions from any of the council members or members of the committee, please let us know in the Audit and Budget Division.
Okay, very good. Do you have any questions from any of the committee members? If not, any council members have any questions? Okay. If not, I'm going to see if we can have a motion to suspend the rules. They do. They're asking for it to be passed. And I don't know, you can tell us, I mean, we're on some sort of a deadline for 1 and 2? Passage tonight?
We are not on a deadline. We do have some of the adjustments that we would like to have, entered into the accounting system so that things can start to move through the system again.
I think most of it will, though, Councilman Mobian. So do we have a motion for suspension of the rules? Is there a second? All in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Moving on to number 2 on the old agenda, ordinance amending or supplementing ordinance number 198-2014, authorizing the Director of Finance to enter into an agreement or agreements with authorized service providers to provide additional deferred compensation investment options to city employees, to select and remove additional financial institutions as investment options for time to time and declare an emergency.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an additional option for city employees, similar to the Ohio 457 deferred compensation plan that's available through the state of Ohio. This is an additional deferred compensation plan that would be made available to city employees. If there are any questions regarding that, Kim Guzman, our accounting manager, is here to answer those questions.
Okay. Do we have any questions from any of the committee members? If not, any council members have any questions? Councilman Mobian?
How would this work?
Go ahead.
This ordinance, can you hear me okay? This ordinance is just adjusting some of the language so we have the ability to look into other deferred compensation programs. This isn't specifically stating a new plan in general. Okay. So we have the Ohio 457 plan, which is a non-city plan, and we have Mass Mutual, which is a city plan. So those are the only 2 current plans that we actually have. We have 2 old plans that city employees can no longer put into. We have maybe 6 or 7 current active people putting into those ones. So this just gives us the opportunity to look into other plans so we can have other opportunities for city employees so they're not so restricted.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from any other council members? If not, your pleasure is?
It can stay on consent, that's fine.
So we're okay with consent?
Yes.
Very good. Can we get a motion for consent? Is there a second? All in favor signify by saying aye. Very good. We're going to move on to the new agenda. Item number 1, authorizing and accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission of Summit County and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to Summit County Fiscal Officer and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is our annual property tax levy that's using the city's inside millage which is currently 10.5 mils. That is the maximum amount that we can levy by charter. So we are once again levying 10.5 mils for next year.
Okay, very good. And this is something that we just do? This is something every year?
This is an annual piece of legislation that we pass, yes.
Very good. Any questions from committee members? No? Any council members have any other questions? If not, is consent okay?
Yes.
Can we get a motion for consent? Is there a second? All in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Number 2, resolution requesting the Summit County Fiscal Officer to make an advance payment of tax funds for tax year 2017 payable in 2018 to the City of Akron Treasury Division and declare an emergency.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This piece goes along with the passage of the property tax levy, and what it does is allow the county to advance the property tax collections to the city as they collect them, and not have to wait to advance to pay us the entire amount when the final settlement date comes in for each half of the taxes that are collected. So it allows them to pass those revenues on as they collect them, so it lets us get that money a little bit faster. And this is something that the state changed 4 or 5 years ago to require all cities to pass this piece of legislation authorizing the advancing of funds.
Okay, very good. Any questions from committee members? Any council members have any questions? If not, consent okay?
Yes.
Can we get a motion for consent? Is there a second? All in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Item number 4, ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of notes in a principal amount not exceeding $13,500,000 to pay the property owner's portion in anticipation of a levy and collection of special assessments of the cost of improving certain streets in the city between certain termini by providing street cleaning services and street lighting and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to have Cheryl Bryson, our city treasurer, go through these, all of these debt ordinances one at a time, but just kind of an overall summary of, because there are several pieces related to debt here. The bulk, in terms of dollars, the bulk of these are going to be for debt service savings through refunding bonds that we've issued in prior years. So we're looking at about an $8 million of savings for bonds that we've issued earlier by refunding those bonds. We're also doing a couple of special assessment issuances, the first of which you read, which is our annual street cleaning and street lighting note, which allows us to fund the program in the current year and then pay that debt back with the special assessments that we collect next year, because we collect those a years in arrears. So it just allows us to fund the current program until we collect the assessments next year. We're also doing a couple street projects with assessment bonds, and then we have our various purpose issue that we do every year that will have several components to it for each purpose that we issue. So there will be streets, economic development, recreation and parks, public facilities, and equipment replacement pieces for our new money issue for 2018, well, actually our 17 issue, and those will be one-year notes for that particular issue. Okay, so I'll let Cheryl go through the individual pieces.
Yes, thank you. This particular piece of legislation, as Steve mentioned, is for our street lighting and street cleaning services that we provide annually. That is a one-year note that we use to fund the projects ahead of time. As a point of reference for last year, we did certify $14.7 million, and we did collect $13.6 million, which puts our collections at roughly 93%. That is the bulk of our assessments. We typically will assess about $20 million, so you'll see that the bulk of of our assessments are the street lighting and street sweeping with a fairly good collection rate.
And this is the same amount that we did last year. So the cleaning lighting rates did not change. We're doing the exact same issuance amount as we did last year.
Okay. Very good. Do we have any questions from committee members? If not, we'll open it up to council members. Okay, no questions. Consent, okay?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Can we get a motion for consent? We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Item number 5, ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $500,000 of bonds to pay in anticipation of the collection of special assessments heretofore levied, the property owner's portion of the cost of improving certain streets in the city and declaring an emergency.
Yes, thank you. Once again, these are assessments that will be issuing financing ahead to pay for the project so that we can collect it over a period of time to pay those bonds back. This will be for the 16 1 and 2 arterial collector resurfacing, 1 and 2 unimproved, and the 1 and 2, as I said, and then the residential resurfacing phase 1, as well as the 2016 sidewalk program. Those will all go out 5 years with the exception of the sidewalk program, which will be a 10-year. If you have any questions, we're more than happy to answer those.
Very good. Do we have any questions from any council members? Anyone not on the committee have any questions? If not, is consent okay?
Yes.
Okay, can we get a motion for consent? We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. I do apologize. We have so many. I've already skipped over one. We need to go back to number 3, because we have not dealt with that one yet. Number 3, ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of notes in a maximum principal amount of $20 million in anticipation of the issuance of bonds to retire notes issued for the purpose of providing funds to pay the cost of various improvements in the city and declaring an emergency.
Yes, thank you. This portion would be the refunding portion of the IT notes, totaling $20 million, which would be for 2015 and 2016. As a point of reference, in total, $17 million of that was streets at 88%, 1.8 of that was motor equipment, or 9%, and a very small portion at 3% was for economic development, and these notes will retire those previous notes.
Okay, thank you so much. Any questions from committee members or council members? If not, consent?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, can we get a motion for consent? We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Moving on to number 6, correct? Okay, let me make sure we're on the right page. Ordinance providing the issuance and sale of not to exceed $3,300,000 of bonds to pay in anticipation of the collection of special assessments heretofore levied, the property owner's portion of the cost of improving East Market Street in the city by paving, grading, constructing, reconstructing, and installing curbs, concrete sidewalks, and driveway approaches, all together with the necessary, I might need some help. I'll try.
Appurtenances.
Come on, council members, like a committee. Okay. Appurtenances. Hereto and declaring an emergency.
Yes, thank you. And that was very well done, thank you.
Yeah, and tell us what that is, too. Thank you.
Okay. This portion is a special assessment being done for the work that was done for the East Market Street East End or Goodyear project, however you happen to know that project by name. The total project is $4.8 million. We did receive an OPWC grant that brought the private portion down to 3.3. This will go over 10 years and will be paid as an assessment by the developer.
Okay, very good. Do we have any questions from committee members? We'll open it up to council members. Okay. If not, can we get a motion for consent? All in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Item number 7, ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of bonds in the maximum principal amount of $4,485,000 for the purpose of refunding certain maturities of general obligation bonds of the city issued in 2010 and declaring an emergency.
Yes, thank you. As mentioned, this will be refunding the 2000A bonds. 2.48 million of that was new, 1.56 of that was a refunder. The savings on this will be $65,000 by refinancing.
Okay, very good. Any questions from committee members? Any questions from any council members? Okay. If not, motion for consent? Is there a second? Second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Okay, moving on to item number 8. Ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of bonds in the maximum principal amount of $15,160,000 for the purpose of refunding certain maturities of general obligation bonds of the City of Akron issued in 2010 and declare an emergency.
Yes, thank you. This is the refunding portion of the 2010B bonds, and the savings on this by refinancing will be $1,218,000.
Any questions from committee members? Any questions from council members? If not, can we get a motion for consent? Is there a second? All in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Item number 9. Ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of notes in a maximum principal amount of $4 million in anticipation of the issuance of bonds to retire notes issued for the purpose of providing funds to pay expenses associated with the settlement of health care claims, whether by reserve or otherwise, and the city's portion of the cost of maintaining its self-insurance program for employee health care benefits and declare an emergency.
Yes, thank you. This piece will indeed fund the retirement of the previous bonds that had been issued for the health note claims that had been issued, what, 4 years ago?
Yeah, we issued in 2009, I believe, we issued our first health claims note, and we've paid that. That was originally a $14 million issue. We've been paying that down to where it is now a $3.5 million issue.
Very good. Any questions from any council members? If not, can we get a motion for consent? All in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Moving on to item number 10. Ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of bonds of the city in a maximum principal amount of $191,195,000 for the purpose of refunding bonds issued by the city in 2010 to pay the cost of acquiring, constructing, improving, renovating, repairing, enlarging, adding to, reconstructing, maintaining, equipping, furnishing, acquiring interest in real property in connection with improving the sites of and otherwise improving community learning centers and declaring an emergency.
Yes, thank you. This is another refinancing piece that may refinance the 2010 CLCs, the 2012 CLCs, both A and B, and the 14's CLC in full. And with a combined savings, should we refinance all of them, will be $6,469,000.
Yeah, one thing that Cheryl mentioned there is we're getting legislation authorizing us to refinance all of those bonds. What we will do, however, is look at those bonds at the time we sell and see if the savings are sufficient to make it worthwhile to do the refinancing. And in some cases, we may only refund certain bonds and not others. So just to let everyone know that this doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to refinance all of these bonds. This just allows us to do so if there are substantial savings there to take advantage of.
Okay, very good. Councilman Hoke?
Got a question concerning the bonds with the community learning centers. This won't change any of the funding, the state funding that we've received, or that we will be receiving for any of that?
No, this is only the city's contribution to the entire project was the issuance of $337 million in bonds. This just lowers our debt service on those bonds.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Welcome. Councilman Sims?
Thank you. So is there a hard and fast number or percentage when you say significant savings? Is there a threshold?
We usually look to try to get 5% savings, so it's not so much of a number as it is the percentage. So that first issue that we did, that we talked about, which was the 2010 GO bonds, was only about $65,000 in savings, but the percentage savings was upwards of 3.5%. So that one's kind of right on the border. That's one that we may not do, but if the market moves in the right direction, we would look to refinance those.
So in essence, we do have a threshold of 5%.
Right.
Thank you.
Any other questions from any other council members? If not, can we get a motion for consent? All in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Moving on to item number 11, ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of bonds in the maximum principal amount of $23,660,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that we did have one substitute that we introduced. There was originally a piece for the 2012 bonds, but not for the 2014 bonds. So I believe we do have a substitute piece of legislation that addresses
for number
the 14.
11?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 23,660. None of us do. Are we supposed to have a substitute in front of us?
Okay.
Check in the back. Here's number 11.
Yeah.
They probably have some in there. I hope.
Yep.
Okay, so we do have a substitute for item number 11, so I'll go ahead and read that in. Ordinance 2017, authorizing the issuance and sale of bonds in the maximum principal amount of $23,660,000 for the purpose of refunding certain maturities of income tax revenue bonds of the city issued in 2014 and declaring an emergency.
Yes, thank you. As mentioned, this is a refinancing for the 2014 income tax revenue bonds, which will produce savings of $300,000.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions from any of the committee members? Any questions from any council members? And the reason why there was a substitute, I'm just curious.
Originally, there was a piece prepared for the 2012 bonds, but we missed the 2014 bonds when we sent everything over to our bond counsel. And when we realized that, we had a piece prepared. The 2012 bonds currently are not showing any savings. So we had the piece substituted for the 14 bonds, which are showing about $300,000 in savings.
Okay, thank you so much. Can we get a motion for consent? Is there a second? Second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Okay, the ayes have it. Moving on to item number 12. Ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of notes in a maximum principal amount of $500,000 in anticipation of the issuance of bonds to pay the cost of improving municipal buildings and facilities in the city by constructing, reconstructing, renovating, repairing roofs, remodeling, relocating, and making site and other improvements, planning and designing facilities, and acquiring and installing related equipment, all as applicable, designed or to be designed by the Director of Public Service, and declaring an emergency.
Yes, thank you. This is the first piece of the $10 million of new money that will be issued in income tax notes in the fall. 500,000 of that, as mentioned, will be used as you've designated.
Okay, very good. Any questions from committee members? If not, any questions from any other council members? If not, we're going to ask for a motion for consent. All in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Item number 14, ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of notes in a maximum principal amount of $200,000 in anticipation of the issuance of bonds to pay the cost of improving the municipal parks and recreational system in the city and declaring an emergency.
Yes, thank you. As mentioned, this is the second piece that will be issued under the new portion of $10 million for the income tax notes. $200,000 will be used for Parks and Rec.
Thank you. Okay. All right, thank you. Any questions from committee members? Any questions from any other council members? Councilwoman Omobian?
Including in this, I know that we've been talking about the Ed Davis Park. Would this be part of the funds to renovate that, or no?
We have a list of projects from our planning department that we can have that will show the makeup of what the $200,000 is.
Okay, thank you. That'd be helpful.
Any other questions? If not, can we get a motion for consent? All in favor signify by saying aye. Okay, the ayes have it. Okay, I'm glad we're almost done because I missed another one. We're going to go back to number 13. I'm so sorry. Ordinance authorizing the issuing and sale of notes in a maximum principal amount of $2,500,000 in anticipation of the issuance of bonds to pay the cost of acquiring and equipping motor vehicles for certain divisions in the city and declaring an emergency.
Yes, thank you. This is the third piece of the $10 million of new monies that will be issued income tax notes. $2.5 million will be used for acquiring and equipping motor vehicles.
Okay, very good. Do we have any questions from any of our committee members? We're going to open up to council members. Councilwoman Sims?
So what would be the difference with the 0.25% income tax that we're currently seeking in the vehicles and things here?
This would be, a portion of the new tax money would be used for these types of purposes. The hope is that we could do some of those purchases without the issuance of debt, should we get the tax passed.
So that would change if the tax passes?
It would just be the method for financing. This is our annual equipment replacement program, which is police cruisers, trucks for our public works divisions. So this is purchasing those vehicles and financing it over a 5-year period. Should we get the tax passed, then we could do some of those purchases with cash instead of having to finance them.
I think I understand. I think that's just part of the challenge of having 17 pieces, trying to put the pieces together so that we can really have a better understanding of what it is we're talking about here. Because even when we put on the consent agenda, forgive me for going on, I still have to go figure this out, these 17, while the other 10 come in for next week. So I don't know if we can just maybe break it up a little bit. It could be helpful so I can, it's hard to, it's been challenging, at least for me, to follow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilman Sims. Councilman Swirsky? Can you use your mic? Thank you.
Can you give us an idea how many vehicles, are police, how many are for, say, Public Works? A little breakdown on so we can talk about the need, why we need these.
Okay, the planning department does have a list of the vehicles that are being financed with this particular piece of the various purpose issue, which we can provide.
That'd be great.
And I was just going to add, there was probably an ordinance that listed all of the equipment that we would be buying. But again, we're happy to buy a list.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from any other council members? If not, we're going to ask for a motion for consent. All in favor signify by saying aye. Okay, the ayes have it. Moving on to item number 15. Ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of notes in a maximum principal amount of $1,100,000 in anticipation of the issuance of bonds to pay the cost of certain economic development projects in the city and declaring an emergency.
Yes, thank you. This is the fourth piece of the new monies to be issued under the income tax note portion of our financing to be $1.1 million to be used for economic development purposes.
Okay. Any questions from committee members? Any questions from any council members? Councilman Swirsky?
Could you get us a list of economic development projects? That would be...
We will provide, yes.
That would be great. I'm just trying to think of the concrete things that my constituents might want to know where this money's going.
Okay.
And, I mean, the financing is, I see, very complicated. And I appreciate your wizardry at pulling these things off, so...
Very good. Do we have any other questions from any other council members? If not, going to ask for a motion for consent. All in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Moving on to item number 16, ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of notes in a maximum principal amount of $5,700,000 in anticipation of an issuance of bonds to pay the cost of constructing, reconstructing, and otherwise improving certain streets in the city and declaring an emergency.
Yes, thank you. This is the last piece of the new portion of IT notes that will be issued in the upcoming months at $5.7 million and will be used for streets.
Very good. Any questions from committee members? Any other council members have any questions? Councilman Sims?
You just indulge me for a moment. On page 4, where you go and you're looking at the terms, are we saying, can you explain this chart to me? Just year 1 and then year 11.
Okay, so these are what are called bond anticipation notes. So we're issuing a one-year note in anticipation of eventually refinancing this with a longer-term bond, a 20-year bond. So we are required to show what the amortization of that 20-year bond principal would be over 20 years, and that's what this legislation is doing. So it's showing what the annual principal amount will be when we issue the bonds to retire this note.
So this is amortized over 20 years?
Correct. It isn't right now. We're doing a one-year note, but eventually we'll refinance this note with a bond, with a 20-year bond.
Do we have any other questions from any other council members? If not, can we get a motion for consent? All in favor signify by saying aye. Okay, the ayes have it. Now moving on to the last item, number 17. Ordinance repealing and replacing ordinance number 40, 2017, creating, establishing, and recognizing departments, offices, bureaus, divisions, and positions into classified service of the City of Akron, requiring that only budgeted funded positions be filled and declaring an emergency. Mr. Rice?
Yes, this is just our semi-annual revision to the omnibus ordinance that will take into account the needs of the departments as it relates to the positions they'd like to see funded.
Okay, very good.
Not necessarily funded, but...
Okay, do we have any questions from any of the committee members? Councilman Amobian?
So if I looked at the TO for the City of Akron, it would show me the departments and the head of those departments, and underneath are all these various positions. Would that be what this amounts to?
What you mean, the organizational chart for each
Yeah,
of these?
table of
Yes,
organization.
yes. Yes, that would be true.
This is what it is,
Yes.
essentially.
That's what it is.
Just broken out in detail?
Absolutely.
Okay. I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Councilman
I know
Sims?
this sounds strange, but we normally wouldn't fill a position we have money for anyway, would we?
No.
So the way, I guess it's similar to the question that Councilwoman Amobian was asking. So I'm looking at page 1, and so you have the Office of the Mayor. So under each one of those, there are multiple positions, right? We just don't have all the positions here, do we?
That is correct. Yeah. This will be a macro list of the divisions.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilwoman Amobian?
When we received the budget, there was a discussion about, just for an example, the Department of, the area of communications, the department where Ms. Christine Curry has, that she needs more staff. Is that reflected here, or that would just be something that would be added on, or what? Because
Hi, Tammy Cavell from the Law Department. Is this on? This ordinance is only for the classified positions within the city of Akron, so that's all that's going to be reflected here. There aren't actual numbers of employees per department or division, but if you look at Section 3, that sets forth the authority that the positions have to be budgeted and funded in order to be filled.
what page is that on, section?
The very last page, page 43.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from any other council members? Okay. If not, what is your pleasure on this item?
The will of the council, consent, time.
For consent? Okay, we have a motion for consent, and there's a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Okay, the ayes have it. If there's nothing else coming before the committee, we will adjourn.